Right, ready?
I don't either.
All right, we're ready to go. All right. All right, good morning. Welcome to the meeting of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District Governing Board. We have board members participating in person and on Zoom. We will do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation on Zoom, in person, and webcast. Before we begin, here are some important guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. Please silence your other communication devices, such as your cell phone or desk phone. This will ensure that we are not hearing any feedback that can interrupt the meeting. During the meeting, all public participants, except for board members and district staff, will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will be asked to unmute when it is their turn to speak. Only board members and staff will be visible on Zoom. Members of the public will be asked to unmute themselves once they are recognized to make a public comment. Members of the public attending on Zoom can press their raise their hand feature or button during the agenda item to indicate they wish to speak on that item. After each agenda item presentation, the chair will open the public comment period. The clerk will recognize any public attendee who has indicated they wish to speak. So with that, we'll move to item 2, which is roll call.
Mr. Bessinger?
Here.
Mr. Chiesa?
Here.
Mr. Couch?
Here.
Ms. Fugazi?
Present.
Ms. Lewis?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Mendez?
Here.
Dr. Pacheco-Werner? She is on the Zoom. I see her. Mr. Pereira?
Present.
Mr. Preciado?
Here.
Mr. Reyes?
Present.
Mr. Rickman? Dr. Sheriff?
Here.
Ms. Shucklian?
Here.
Mr. Wheeler?
Here.
And Mr. Peterson.
I'm here as well.
We have a quorum.
Okay, very good. With that, we'll move to item 3, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would all join me in standing. Ready, salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah.
Item number 3 is election of officers for 2022.
Uh-oh. Who's jumping in? Yeah.
So, good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. Yeah, so this is the hopefully final piece of the process that the board has put into place for electing officers for the coming year. As a quick reminder, one of the key steps of this process is for the board to form an ad hoc subcommittee to consider candidates to nominate to serve as chair and vice chair for 2022. That subcommittee was formed and did meet to discuss this. Along with that process, there's a conversation around the challenges that are facing us, opportunities in the coming year, and really taking a look at that and evaluating that as part of establishing the nominations. The subcommittee did meet, and just as a reminder, the subcommittee was Dr. Pacheco-Werner, Supervisor Rickman, Supervisor Couch, Mayor Pro Tem Lewis, and Mayor Reyes, who were able to hold that meeting. And they are nominating for the coming year as chair, Mayor Monty Reyes, and as vice chair, Supervisor Vito Chiesa. So now it's with your board for discussion and formal action.
Right. Thanks for thanks for all the committee members putting in the time to get this accomplished. And with that, I would open it to the board for any comments.
Yeah, I think that was a fine selection. I think Councilman Reyes has been a great board member, and I think he's ready to be sentenced to the chair. And I look forward to it, and I will make a motion to accept the committee's recommendation.
I would second
I'll
that.
second that.
One of
Okay,
us.
we have multiple seconds. And remind me, Madam Clerk, do we need to go to public comment for this? Okay. So at this point, you're good. Okay, we'll go to public comment.
We do not have members of the public present in the central. Do we have any members of the public present in the northern region?
There's no public comment from the north.
Are there any public members present in the southern region?
We do not have any members present.
And do we have any public comment on Zoom? I do not see an indication of public comment. Good to go.
All right, very good. Well, board members, bring it back. We have a motion and a second. So with that, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Bessinger,
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa,
Yes.
Mr. Couch,
Sorry, yes.
thank you. Ms. Fugazi? I believe she might have stepped away. Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Werner, Dr. Pacheco Werner? He might have stepped away as well. Mr. Pereira,
Aye.
Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Yes, and thank you.
Dr. Sheriff,
Yes.
Ms. Shucklian,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
I vote aye.
Motion passes. Item number 5, excuse me, is end of the year address by Chairman Peterson.
Well, first, let's start by congratulating both of the new officers, the board. Really appreciative of your commitments and your service. And, you know, it's been a strange couple of years as chair with, you know, the lack of a lot of public in the chambers. We've usually had a very active chamber, and as you all know, it's one of those strange times in life, but we still, you know, move to accomplish the goals of this organization. And I want to say thank you to both of you for stepping forward and being willing to continue the mission and the goals of the organization that have been moving forward for many, many years. And so proud to have served as chairman for the last 2 years. You know, we all serve at the pleasure of our boards and the members of our community, and it's an honor to be here. But I can tell you the biggest honor is serving with the staff of the Air District. You guys are awesome. We can't state that enough. And the way that this board functions and the professionalism that surrounds it. And so with that, congratulations. And I've been here 7 years, and 2 of those as chair, and look forward to another year. So with that, Samir?
No, I'm not sure if you're gonna add any more comments, but I just wanted to say a few words on behalf of staff as well, but I didn't want to.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Chair, for your leadership over these last 2 years. You've served as chair for 2 years, and you started that role, you know, early in 2020, right before the pandemic hit, and then, you know, the pandemic hit us all, and you were there at the head of the organization, helping us transition to a whole different way of continuing to do our business. And you were so supportive to myself and the staff, and we were able to accomplish a lot, you know, over these past couple of years under your chairmanship. You've been a great support to me personally, and just appreciate all the guidance and the great conversations that we've had, and the support that you've provided to the staff as a whole. You've really been a great leader these past couple of years, and there's so many accomplishments that we've made under your tenure. So I really appreciate you, and I just, on behalf of myself, the entire management team, and the entire staff, just wanted to thank you for all your leadership and all of your commitment and dedication to fulfilling our mission, our public health mission, and serving the residents of the Valley. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, just the last piece of this, you know, as is our tradition, we did put together a plaque here, you know, on your behalf and in recognition of your service, and it reads, Supervisor Craig Peterson of Kings County, with gratitude for your service as chairman 2020 and 2021 from the governing board of the San Joaquin Valley Unified Air Pollution Control District. So you can hang this up on your wall next to all of your other awards and accolades.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much for your service.
Well, thank you.
Go down and get it now.
Oh, I gotta go. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta get a picture of you, man. Yeah.
On this way also. There you go. Guys looking good. Thank you.
Hey.
Oh, on this one.
Can't put it on Facebook because you're back. Face back. There you go.
Thank you. You got it, buddy?
Yeah.
Item number 6 is approval of consent calendar, items 18 through 23.
Move to approve.
Right, we have a motion.
Second.
Madam Clerk, we do need to go to public comment.
Through the chair, is there any public comment on Zoom? I see no indication of public comment.
Okay. With that, we have a motion and second. Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Bessinger,
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa,
Yes.
Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Fagazi, I believe she stepped away, Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Werner,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
Aye.
Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Yes.
Dr. Sherritt,
Yes.
Ms. Shucklian? Ms. Shucklian? Okay, she may have stepped away. Mr. Wheeler?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
I pushed my space bar, but it must not have worked. Aye.
Got it. Thank you very much. And Mr. Peterson voted aye as well. Motion passes.
Okay, very good. Before we move to public comment, I have an obligatory responsibility to provide the chairman's address. And so with that, I will endeavor upon this. I think it'll be shorter than years past. I think at the request of the chair. Yeah. And it's been a while since I went to the Evelyn Woodhead Sped Redden course, and so I'll do that. But before I jump in on that, I just want to say that again, I truly appreciate the opportunity to serve. And you know, when you look back over life and the opportunities that have you know, come your way, and I the first board that I ever served on, the California Association of Wheat Growers. And from that point, I think that was in 1988. And the one thing that's been common through all those things is great leadership. And I've tried to be a sponge and suck up the things that I've witnessed. And you know, I'm certainly not the best at it, but I do appreciate the leadership that you know, has been provided within the agriculture industry, and then now moving to you know, being a member of the Board of Supervisors and especially this board as well, and kind of getting to that sunset clause in life where, you know, there's probably not too many more opportunities like this, and but you know, the new opportunities that will come my way, I'm sure I'm gonna you know, dive headfirst into, and I'm not sure what those will be, but I really look forward to the opportunity. But we'll miss serving this board as well. So with that, we'll get into the more data-oriented part of this address. So with that, as my second year as chair of the Valley Air Board comes to a close, it has truly been an honor to serve the Valley in this role and work with the exceptional board and staff. At the end of another unprecedented year, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the ongoing efforts of this board and agency in working together with our Valley residents, businesses, and other stakeholders to improve air quality and quality of life for our residents. I'm extremely proud that over the past year, we took tremendous steps to move forward the district's public health clean air mission. These efforts include the adoption of numerous new innovative clean air measures that continue to transition industrial equipment to the latest technologies, and strong partnerships with the agricultural community and the state to work together to transition remaining open burning to cleaner alternatives, such as chipping and land incorporation. Additionally, this district continues to set the bar for all other clean air agencies with respect to clean air grant programs, and the district administering hundreds of millions of dollars of new incentive funding over this past year to support the Valley's transition to new vehicles, equipment, technologies, and practices. Through these programs, we've worked with residents to adopt electric vehicles, growers to modernize the agricultural equipment fleet, shippers to modernize trucking fleets, public agencies to modernize or transition to new electric and other vehicle technologies, and so much more. Additionally, over the past year, the district has worked more closely than ever with our communities through the AB 617 and other community-focused initiatives. All board members live in, represent Valley communities, and the board has been very supportive of new approaches for understanding and addressing community concerns. All of this tremendous work in support of our clean air mission was performed in the midst of a pandemic. And I'd like to express my gratitude to the residents, businesses, community organizations, public agencies, and other Valley stakeholders that have supported this work, even during these difficult times, and their patience as well. I would also like to take a second to recognize the hard work of the district staff and throughout the Valley's counties that work day in and day out to help clean our air. Through these efforts, the Valley's air quality continues to improve, with the Valley closer than ever to meeting the 8-hour ozone standard by 2023 target, and the Valley now meeting the 65 microgram PM 2.5 standard. While air pollution is at its lowest levels ever and progress is significant, pervasive air quality issues remain due to our unique challenges that will require ongoing and concerted clean air efforts. In the coming year, continuing to move forward with new clean air initiatives will require extensive and meaningful engagement with the Valley, including residents, businesses, community advocates, and other stakeholders. This is especially critical in the face of our continued air quality challenges and the need to continue pushing the bar with respect to new technologies that will only be successful with strong support from the Valley public impacted by those measures. There's much to be done in the coming year, and I'm excited to support our new chair and vice chair in this role and as we tackle next year's challenges. Like I said, like I said last year, and I know everyone feels in year 2 of this pandemic, I'm looking forward to getting through 2021 and moving to 2022. I'm confident that this board's strong and wise leadership with Samir at the helm and his great team will continue in our tradition of excellence in serving this Valley. So with that, I'd like to close just by saying thank you all. I want to wish you all the best through the holidays. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, and yada, yada, yada. But again, thank you all for the opportunity to serve the board, and I will always remember this as one of the most enjoying times of my life and in serving the public. So thank you all. All right, we have moved through item 6. We'll move to item 7, which is,
Through the chair, it looks like we have a comment from one of the board members.
uh-oh.
Supervisor Shucklian.
Oh, come on, chair overrules.
Yeah.
No, I just want to thank you, Craig. This being my first year on the board, hopefully many more years on this board. You were quite a leader and a good model for cool, calm, and collected chair. So I appreciate that. I just have one clarification. You stated at the beginning that your first stint on a board was it the wheat growers? That was with a T and not a D, right? I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, yes. Wheat
Okay,
as in
wheat
flour, not
growers.
as in weed, as in smoke.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You should have done them both.
Yeah.
Item number 7 is public comment.
Okay. This time is made available for comments from the public on matters within the board's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda. It is requested that no comments be made during this time period on items on the agenda. The public may make comments on each board agenda item during the time allowed for public comment on that item. Attention is called to the fact that the board is prohibited by law from taking action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda. Members of the public on Zoom, please press the raise your hand button so that you may be recognized. Members of the public who have called into the Zoom meeting, please press *9 so that you may be recognized to speak. Also *6 to mute and unmute yourself. Please be prepared to speak when your name or the last 4 digits of your phone number is called. Please state your name prior to beginning your public comment. Madam Clerk.
Janet Dietz-Kamay.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Peterson and board members and staff. Well, as far as climate change, we have seen climate change in action in the 6 states that experienced a mega tornado: Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Kentucky, Kentucky being the worst. But I want to talk today about the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. The Air District's mission, the San Joaquin Valley Air District, is a public health agency whose mission is to improve the health and quality of life for all Valley residents through efficient, effective, and entrepreneurial air quality management. The vision, healthful air that meets or exceeds air quality standards for all Valley residents. What we don't see is graphs and slides on the cost of trying to stay healthy, breathing the unsafe air in San Joaquin Valley. There is significant cost in living here. Doctor visits, medications enabling us to effect control over our reactions to the air, inhalers, antihistamines, nasal sprays, shots, masks to protect us from breathing this air, to name a few. Emergency room and hospital visits. For those of us who can afford it, air purifiers, HEPA filters, MERV 13 and 14 HVAC filters, even buying the filters to create a safe room using a fan. The list goes on. And I have monitors and air purifiers in my cars, my house, everywhere, just to see that I am safe from the air. Figured into overall cost, public health costs are an imperative inclusion because they exist and have a profound effect upon Valley residents. Many Valley residents are suffering from the worst air in USA. Many residents don't know they are sick from breathing air until they, as I did, end up in an emergency room. Thank you for the progress we've made, but please, please focus on your mission statement. Focus on public health. Focus on safe air quality. Stringent rules are necessary for Valley residents' quality of life. We who are housebound depend upon you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Connie Young.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. So I'm Connie Young, a Fresno resident, retired registered nurse, and volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby, also known as CCL. Chairman Peterson, I've said this to you privately, but I'd like to publicly thank you for the respect and courtesy you have shown to all the members of the public who have taken time to share their thoughts with the board. Thank you for your gracious leadership. I recently watched a film entitled 2040, and I recommend that everyone here watch it too. Vice Mayor Fugazi, I think your students would find it especially upbeat and interesting. It takes a look at a future I hope to live long enough to see, a future in which energy and transportation are clean and quiet, a future in which one can plan one's outdoor activities without first consulting the Purple Air Map or the Air District's RAM, a future in which children and outdoor laborers don't have to miss school or work because of asthma attacks. And most important to me, a future when the monitor at Mount Mauna Loa in Hawaii registers a decrease in atmospheric CO2 concentration and global temperatures begin to decline. Sadly, for the time being, the effects of the CO2 that's already in the atmosphere are already baked in for years to come. So it's not likely that I'll see a reduction in the unprecedented droughts, floods, wildfires, hurricanes, and tornadoes that increasingly destroy lives, livelihoods, and places we love. The work that you do is critically important as you reduce both air pollution and greenhouse gases, and I thank you and the staff for that. I also encourage you to do more. Please use your influence on Capitol Hill to urge the Senate to include a price on carbon with cash back to U.S. households in the budget reconciliation package, also known as Build Back Better. We simply have to stop subsidizing the fossil fuels that are fouling our air and overheating our planet. Let's level the playing field and let the market, meaning us consumers, choose energy winners and losers. I think when given the choice, most people would choose the clean energy future described in the film 2040. With that said, I hope your holidays are merry, and I wish you a happy and healthy new year. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the nice comments.
Next is Claire Statham.
Good morning. My name is Claire Statham. In October, I advocated for amending Rule 4901 to require fireplace chimneys be disabled when a house is sold in urban and suburban areas. I will continue today with that topic. 5 issues come to mind when I speak of disabling a chimney: finance, process, liability, enforcement, and what I call issues of perspective or attitude. This last is my topic today. I will address the others at future meetings. Scientific research and the Air District's own literature are clear on the fact that wood smoke is bad for our health. Given the unanimity of view, why is it so hard to ban fireplace burning? I conjecture there is a fear a ban might elicit significant public pushback and perhaps widespread noncompliance. So consider the case of a house that is being sold. The seller, the very person who might object to being told he cannot use the fireplace if he were to remain in that house, that person will have no attachment to the fireplace of the house he is selling. The seller will not care if the buyer is allowed to use the fireplace. So while there may be financial or liability reasons, topics for another time, for objecting to disabling the fireplace, the emotional attachment to having a fire no longer exists for the seller. At the same time, the buyer understands the rules have changed. For years now, fireplaces have not been allowed in new homes. There is an easy to accept logic, even a fairness to the idea that I can't buy a fireplace if I purchase a newly constructed home, and I can't buy a fireplace in an existing home. Resistance to banning open hearth burning is rooted in a number of beliefs and attitudes. But when a person is selling or buying a house, those beliefs and attitudes lose their intensity. When house hunting, people look at affordability, floor plans, schools, neighborhoods, crime statistics, many things. But having or not having an operating fireplace, according to realty websites, doesn't make the cut of the top 20 features buyers want. If I am reading the Air District's 2020 annual report correctly, it looks as if a little over 1,700 wood stove devices were switched out for cleaner alternatives. I suggest if you look at the number of annual home sales in Fresno, Clovis, and the other metropolitan areas within your jurisdiction, rendering fireplaces inoperable would be an effective way of lowering PM 2.5 emissions. It would be an excellent addition to the current insert incentive program. The people of the Central Valley and the Air District are hard pressed to find ways we can reduce PM 2.5 in the air we breathe. I urge you to amend Rule 4901 to require that houses' fireplaces be disabled at the time of sale. Thank you. And Chairman Peterson, I'd like to add my congratulations for a job well done.
Thank you.
Through the chair, there is no further comment on this item. Item number 8 is report on district citizens advisory committee activities. You have Chairman Abernathy. Looks like he might have dropped off the meeting. I apologize. I don't see. Okay, thank you. Item number 9 is accept and appropriate 20.7 million in additional revenue from the United States Environmental Protection Agency to fund the replacement of agricultural tractors, heavy-duty trucks, and wood-burning devices.
Mr. Chair, board members, I'd like to introduce Aaron Tarango, one of our grants program managers who works really hard with his team to not only implement the programs that we have here, the wide variety of programs, but also works with them to continue seeking new funding opportunities. And so this item is related to a recent award as a result of that work and us competing really well on the national stage. And with that, Aaron.
Yes. Good. Yeah,
But his hair is not quite as white as mine,
it's
so.
getting there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
every day I look and it's getting there, I think.
but it's distinguished.
Yeah, I've been told that. Like Mr. Mayor said, my name is Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Aaron Tarango. I'm a program manager here at the district in the Grants and Incentives Department. I'm here seeking your board's approval to accept and appropriate $20,768,770 in additional revenue from the United States Environmental Protection Agency to fund the replacement of ag tractors, heavy-duty trucks, and wood-burning devices. As you know, the next one now. As you know, incentives play an important role in reducing mobile source emissions outside of the district regulatory authority. The district has worked closely with our Valley partners to successfully advocate, compete for, and receive funds for clean air funding. To date, $3.5 billion in public and private investments have been made to achieve 189,000 tons of emission reductions in the Valley. The district has gained a reputation for administering successful and effective incentive programs. The consistent praise for efficiency and fiscal accountability is a key factor when it comes to competing for funding. EPA's Targeted Airshed program is a key federal grant program that supports the Valley's clean air efforts. These current federal Targeted Airshed awards that will be discussed in the next few slides are yet another example of the district's ability to identify a need and an opportunity, and then aggressively pursuing funding to address that need. So this past March this year, thank you. March of this year, 2021, the district submitted 3 proposals to EPA in response to the highly competitive nationwide Targeted Airshed Grant Program. The 3 applications include the following project proposals. The first one was to replace Tier 0, Tier 1, or Tier 2 ag tractors throughout the Valley with brand new Tier 4 tractors. The second proposal was to replace open hearth fireplaces, old wood or pellet burning devices with new, cleaner emitting burning devices. And finally, the third proposal was to replace 2016 or older model year heavy duty trucks with zero and near zero emission heavy duty trucks. So here are some of the basically, let's go back one. Just ahead of me there. So on October 15th of this year, I should say, EPA informed the district that all three of our proposals were selected for funding. And I'll go into the full amounts now. The ag tractor replacement proposal was selected to receive $8 million, which is the full funding amount. The heavy duty truck replacement proposal was selected to receive, the wood fireplace change out proposal was selected to receive $8 million, which is the full funding amount. Then the heavy duty truck replacement proposal was selected to receive $4,768,770 for a total award of $20,768,770. And this, as a side note, in fact, we were notified that the district received 35% of total funding, and the district ag tractor proposal was ranked #1 in the nation, which we're very, very proud of. And then to add to that, the district award was the largest award per entity in the nation. Next slide here. So some of the highlights of the three proposals here. The first, the $8 million for ag tractors will replace approximately 210 Tier 0, Tier 1, or Tier 2 tractors with new Tier 4 tractors. The district will utilize the existing ag tractor replacement program guidelines to administer the funds. The expected emission reductions are 910 tons of NOx, 113 tons of PM, and 43 tons of VOCs. Next, we have the award for fireplace changeouts. The fireplace replacement grant award of $8 million will replace approximately 5,760 open hearth fireplaces, old wood, or pellet burning devices with new cleaner emitting devices. The district will utilize the existing burn cleaner program guidelines to administer the funds. The expected emission reductions are 1,992 tons of particulate matter from this project. And the highlights of the third award, the heavy duty truck replacement grant award of $4.7 million will replace approximately 56 heavy duty trucks with zero and near zero emission heavy duty trucks. The district will utilize the framework in the existing truck replacement program to administer these funds. The expected emission reductions are 75 tons of NOx, 0.15 tons of PM, and 1.7 tons of VOCs. So finally, you're seeking your board's recommendation or approval. The first recommendation is to accept $20,768,770 from US EPA for the following projects. $8 million to replace old tractors with new Tier 4 tractors. $8 million to change out open hearth fireplaces or non-certified devices with new electric heat pumps and or natural gas devices. And the third is to accept $4,768,770 to replace heavy-duty diesel trucks with zero and near zero emission heavy-duty trucks. The second recommendation is to approve the attached budget resolution to amend the 2021-2022 district budget to appropriate the $20,768,770 in additional revenue. I know it's quick, but that concludes my presentation. And I would be happy to answer any questions you might have about our proposals that we were successfully received from EPA.
Very good. Thank you, Aaron. Let's see. Supervisor Wheeler.
Thank you. It's so great to see those when we get those kind of dollars come into us, and we're #1 in the nation. So, but the question I had on page 6, it says that there's cleaner pellet burning devices now. Is that true? I don't know that. I mean, there's a lot of people use them up there, but they make better ones now or something, or I thought they were all about the same.
Yeah, Supervisor Wheeler. So the funding that we just received from EPA would be used in the existing burn cleaner program guidelines. So, as you know, we've continued to enhance that program. So in urban areas where you have access to natural gas, the eligible devices would be electric heat pumps or natural gas devices. In areas without access to natural gas, you would still be able to install a certified wood burning device or a pellet stove. And so those are like the latest amendments that the board made to the program. So this funding would feed right into the existing program that the board has already adopted.
Okay, anybody know about pellet burning deals? Are they better now than they were 10 years ago?
They continue to get better over time, for sure. Pellet devices are definitely cleaner than even the latest certified wood burning wood stoves. But there's a range of devices that are available under the program in areas, for example, in the foothill mountain communities where in certain areas you don't have access to natural gas. Certainly those devices are available, continue to be available under the program.
Okay.
Right. Supervisor Mendez.
Yeah, I want to, congratulate you, on getting this grant. I mean, this just proves that, your division, our staff are the best in the nation by far. And you guys work very hard and you guys are very good at this. I just kind of curious, we have huge demand on this, especially on the tractor deal. I know this is 210 more, but how many do you actually have in the queue that are waiting?
Currently, I mean, it's a fluctuation per month as come in, come out, but I believe the current backlog is about 2,000 units that are sitting there, that it's constantly moving at all times. It never stops. It's just always going to get them out as fast as we can.
I just want to make that clear for everybody. I think I'm just asking a question. I kind of thought I knew the answer, but 35% of the total nation's dollars for this program just shows that there's not enough money being thrown in to accept the actual demand. And just look at our demand. I mean, we could have had all the money and it still wouldn't have been enough.
Yes, I agree. We asked for everything we can, and in this we were asked the maximum we could ask for $8 million, and they gave $8 million per award. So we're very, very proud of that.
Right, yes. And I just want to let the public know as much money that the state and the federal government are putting into these programs, it's just a drop in the bucket. And 56 trucks. Do you have very many trucks in the queue?
Yes, the trucks are always coming in and out. The trucks are a little tougher because of the current regulations.
Yeah.
So a lot of the trucks now are 2010 compliant trucks. So we're talking about going way above and beyond that.
Right.
To, electric is the new standard, or low NOx natural gas trucks. But as everything else in the world now, to get a truck is tough at this point in time. So there is a delay in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is a high demand.
High demand for that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bessinger.
Yes, I'd also like to join the remainder of the board and congratulate staff on getting this level of funding. And the percentage given to the Central Valley is it's indicative of at least a commitment on the federal level to the problem, and that's always nice. We had a caller who called in about plugging fireplaces during, when they're going to be sold. And I don't know that I would support that, but, a lot of us, we nostalgically smell the air and go, oh, it's a nice warm fireplace. But if you have respiratory problems, that is not nostalgic.
Good smell.
Yeah, it's not a good smell. And I replaced my fireplace. I'm extremely happy with it. It would be, do we as an organization have any kind of social media stuff geared towards this item? And I'd actually like to see it geared towards seniors because they're more likely than not to be living in an older home with a non-compliant fireplace. And with the, even if your fireplace is operating reasonably, you're going to get fumes inside your home, which is kind of, it's a double-edged sword. You have a nice warm house, but you're having difficulty breathing. I know that where I live in Clovis, my RAN is constantly going off, and I know it's because of fireplaces. So to me, I mean, granted, the biggest issue is our heavy-duty trucks, but this is something that will help people in their neighborhoods, especially during the winter when we have some low pressure over the top of us, and it's just putting a ceiling, and everybody's outside breathing the same air. So if we could come up with something that was geared towards specifically seniors, I would definitely share it with my senior center, and I'm sure most of us would do the same thing. They seem to be the most vulnerable audience, and I think they would benefit from this.
Council member, I just wanted to let you know that first, I think that's a great idea and something that we'll certainly see what additional options we have under the current social media outreach that we do. And we do use social media. We do targeted outreach through social media, in addition to some of the other marketing opportunities that we have, whether it's TV or other mechanisms that we use. So I definitely want to follow up on this idea that you have and engage with you a bit more, and definitely pick your brain a bit more on maybe designing that strategy. But the short answer is yes, we do try to target that outreach, and we've relied on the board to really give us some good ideas, like the one that you just presented on, as well as we work very closely with the Environmental Justice Advisory Group and other sounding boards that have all been really helpful in helping us sort of design the marketing of the program to different audiences in different languages as well. So there's definitely an ongoing evolution, continuous improvement in terms of the approach that we try to use, and definitely want to follow up on the idea that you just raised. And I think as the program that does get very regular attention by the board as well, I do anticipate in the coming year that we'll be returning with more ideas on not only the grant component, but also the regulatory approach. Some of the public comments around the open hearth concerns. These are things that are being evaluated, and I do think there's going to be some additional opportunities to look at this in the future as well. Just want to respond to that as well. Appreciate it.
Dr. Sharps. Thank you. Yeah, I don't think staff has to be told, great job, but I'll say it again. Obviously the need is great, and we get a third of the money, partly because of the great need here, but it does definitely speak to the quality of work that staff has been doing on this, and thank you for that. Proposal ranked #1 in the nation on the tractors. Very good work. A couple of questions and also comment. Could you remind us of the definition of a near zero emission heavy duty truck? What trucks that would be included in that?
Those would be your ultra low NOx natural gas trucks. The standard for a heavy duty truck now is 0.2 grams per brake horsepower of NOx. Those would be 0.02. So it's pretty significantly low. And then next would be electric below that, zero. Yeah.
And just a little bit more, just from a numbers side of it. So the ultra low NOx natural gas trucks, they're certified under the state's optional low NOx standard. They're to a 90% or greater reduction compared to the currently compliant truck. So it's at least a 90% reduction. We do know and are actually heavily involved as well in electric truck transition opportunities. There's quite a few trucks that are now emerging and coming onto the market, and so we definitely want to leverage those opportunities as well, depending on the application, the particular fleet's needs, and what's actually available on the market. These are programs that we get up and running in our projects that we want to do today. We are not waiting a number of years to implement these. There's a variety of technologies that are on the market, and so we work very closely with the shippers and other fleets to see if we can really push the envelope when it comes to technology. So it's a variety of different technologies. There's even hydrogen trucks that are emerging as well, which are zero emission technologies. But primarily now it's either the ultra low NOx or electric trucks, wherever those are actually on the market. Somebody can actually purchase one of those.
Great, thank you. Although the lines are long for all of these and the funding is not adequate to cover everyone, every bit makes a difference. And I think it reminds us there are local effects as well as regional effects. And if somebody is working around or with equipment that is lower emission, that there are important local health effects as well as the regional effects. We're obviously driven by the regional numbers, but that every step does make a difference to folks out there. Wondering if we know what the inventory is of tier 0, 1, and 2 tractors out there. We know there's a long line of folks interested in trading up, which is great. Do we know what the inventory is?
Don't have those numbers in front of us, but it is many thousands of tractors. Be happy to get them. Yeah, it's definitely more than the 2,000 that are waiting and currently waiting in the queue. Although we've replaced over 10,000 tractors, just to give you another interesting factoid as far as the success of the grant programs that we've been operating, just through our local programs. The USDA has also replaced another several thousand. So there's definitely been a massive transition through these partnership efforts. But there are many more that are still remaining. A lot of interest from the ag sector to work to replace this.
Yeah, and we understand transportation is a huge issue for our air quality issues. But boy, looking at bang for the buck, it is interesting comparing these 3 programs, and it's important that we've got this suite of responses, if you will, to the problems. We get a lot of NOx and PM 2.5 out of the ag tractors for the dollar. Compared to heavy duty trucks, it's a real value. When we look at PM 2.5, my gosh, 5,700 hearts, $8 million for almost 2,000 tons of PM, compared to a similar amount of money to get 113 tons out of the ag equipment. It is telling. And as far as PM 2.5 goes, boy, the fireplace program is an extraordinary program.
Thank you. I think just in closing too, I think we would be remiss without recognizing, what was talked about earlier in my address and by others, this pandemic and the challenges that we face and the typical doors that we use to try and access these funds. If you've been in meetings, recently, EPA, any federal agency the doors are closed, right? You have problems accessing these folks. And I think just a shout out to our staff for making sure that, we use those connections, that we also, a quick shout out to our federal lobbyist who does a great job in finding those doors. They make their living finding those doors and just want to, yeah, well, the tunnels, the back doors, whatever it takes to do that. So just want to acknowledge that as well. And that, Dr. Sheriff, you have something else?
And along the pandemic lines, it's a reminder, in terms of specific pollutants, PM is the implicated one in terms of outcomes for people who get a COVID infection. Ozone maybe, but PM absolutely. So again, as we look at the benefits of this program in this time, that it's hard to tell where the end of this pandemic is going to be, but it's clearly something we're looking forward to struggling with for months, if not, I hate to say years, but highlighting the importance of that PM 2.5 work. Thanks again.
Supervisor Shuckley. You're on mute, I think.
Yes, I was. I just wanted to add, as far as with the incentives and whatnot, I actually made a quick call to my brother who has gotten a few tractors. Well, he got one. It took over a year to get, and he's currently, I guess, maybe sitting in that queue. They came out in August to inspect and talk to him, and they said maybe he'll get it in April or May, if at all. So,
yep,
it's not a next week kind of thing.
Interesting. Good point. And I think that is a testament to the success of the program, right? I mean, for me as a grower and for years, it was like, all the challenges, but the financial sense, the ease in which the district, I think, has created the application process and made it very open is evident in the success of the program and clearly the backlog that exists. And so with that, let's public comment.
We do, through the chair, we do have public comment on this item. Janet Dietz Kamei.
Thank you. Thank you for accomplishing this and gaining this revenue. I see that there was some hard work on this, but I want to address fireplace smoke. It's a real problem in my neighborhood. During inversion months, the black carbon is pushed down to breathing level. Removing this pollutant from neighborhoods is critical for those of us who have problems with breathing, and actually for everyone. When I go out into what I think is safe air, because I've checked my monitors, to be unexpectedly exposed to smoke from someone's fireplace, I start coughing and gagging. And if I can't get into my house fast enough or into some safety, it turns to retching. And that's not really enjoyable, gagging and retching, because I'm breathing smoke and because I have asthma and because it's triggering my asthma. So I rush back into my house. I'm also exposed to heavy duty trucks now because while it wasn't there when we bought our home, there is a business park near our house with heavy duty trucks driving in and out, and the business park continues to grow. There are hundreds of us whose homes are affected by this. There was a lot of land on a corner of Belmont and Fowler and in between Fowler and Armstrong, which has been turned into a business park. And houses have been built right adjacent to the business park. And people, not knowing the implications of moving into that location, have moved into, and these are houses that are so close together that you could just easily talk to the next person putting your window down, open your window. So the truck replacement with trucks that have lower emissions is very important too. And I very much appreciate that we have this extra funding for these three important projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Through the chair, there's no further comment on this item. I apologize. Mr. Thomas Menz.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, without a doubt, the reductions in particulate matter, PM2.5, from this residential wood burning replacement program does seem to be about the most cost-effective thing that you have going. And it would be really nice if to piggyback on Ms. Stathem's presentation at the beginning of this meeting, if you could include the fireplaces, would be required to be replaced with a gas insert or blocked up. I know that the previous discussion of doing that, there was some concern about how you would go about requiring, or go about actually doing it, but you do in fact have in place a procedure for blocking up a fireplace that another of your frequent commenters, Ms. Connie Young, has taken advantage of in order to get a funding for a heat pump in her home. So you have a fireplace blocking protocol already, in your own literature. I'm holding my breath here. In 2 short weeks at your direction, the Valley Air District will cease to fund any more wood burning replacement devices in areas with access to natural gas. And I hope to God I don't get any more installed near me in these short 2 weeks. But I would also hope that as these wood burning devices that you did fund in the past come up for re-registration, that you would reach out to those folks and notify them the district would be pleased to fund replacement of those wood burning devices with a clean heat pump or a natural gas or propane burning device and ameliorate the potent source of emissions that were unwisely funded in the past. And I would also hope that you will someday follow the lead of other air districts and adopt a measure to require the registration of all wood burning devices that are claimed to be the sole source of heat in a residence. And I hope that you would specifically target those homes and their residents with this generous offer of funding for an electric heat pump, or if they have access to natural gas, which some of those homes do have access, I'd hope that you would specifically target such homes and make known to them that these subsidies are available for the cleaner alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, there is no additional public comment on this item.
Very good. We'll bring it back to the board for action. Board, what's your pleasure?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Right, we have a motion and second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Bessinger,
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa,
Aye.
Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Fugazi,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Werner,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
Aye.
Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Aye.
Dr. Sheriff,
Yes.
Ms. Shucklian,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler,
Yes.
and Mr. Peterson.
I vote aye.
Motion passes.
Good.
Through the chair, we do have the CAC chair, Mr. Abernathy. So if you'd like to revisit item number 8, report on District Citizens Advisory Committee activities.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Abernathy, the floor is yours.
There we go. Finally. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, outgoing chairman, in staying in the essence of the turnarounds at the end of this year. This is my final report to the CAC as the CAC chairman to the governing board. Quite frankly, can't think of a better guy to be put out to pasture with than Chairman Peterson. And also incoming Chairman Reyes. You're in good hands with Daniel Cunha. So I would like to thank Mr. Pereira, Supervisor Pereira, Lloyd, for all your continued support in my nomination and renomination as the Merced County Environmental Primary to the CAC over the years. So thank you very much for that. I'll reiterate the fact, Mr. Chairman, that as you stated, the only reason that I was able to do my job, or actually, I guess, according to some of the dais, look good in my job, was because of the staff. From the Madam Clerk all the way up to the top, in the front door and out the back door, the staff at the district is just absolutely amazing to work with. And they make our jobs very, very easy. So with that, it's been a pleasure to be the chairman for 2 years of CAC. I also let Mr. Pereira, Supervisor Lloyd, I'm sorry, I'm so used to just calling you Lloyd.
No worries.
Thank you. And let him know that unfortunately, as of January, I will at this point no longer be able to serve on the CAC. But with that, thank you guys. Really appreciate all the work that we've been able to hopefully provide some intel and access to the governing board from the CAC, and want to thank all of the current members of the CAC. They've just done an outstanding job to better the overall public health in the Central Valley. So with that, Mr. Chairman and incoming chairman, thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Mr. Abernathy. Yeah, I also would like to thank you for your service. the real work happens out in the communities, and having you at the helm of that is I know I'm very appreciative of your professionalism, your knowledge. Knowledge is power, and there's a lot of opinions, but knowledge and information can comfort or help generate opinions and good policy, and for that I just want to say thank you. I do have, on behalf of the board, official thank you from the board that we'll share with you at some appropriate time when you're in the neighborhood. And but again, thank you for all you've done for air quality in the Central Valley, and your professionalism in doing so. And with that, I'm going to recognize Supervisor Pereira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kevin, you mind if I call you Kevin? Anyways, I just want to thank you for your dedication to the Air Pollution Control District, your common sense, your ability to see both sides, your ability to delve deep into the information and really honor the position that you held. So I'd like to thank you. I wish you well in your new endeavor. Our loss is someone else's gain, and we're going to miss you, but look forward to hearing what your future holds. So again, thank you for serving so diligently, professionally, and accurately.
Thank you. Very, very humbling.
And through the chair, I'm sorry, the incoming CAC Chair Manuel Cunha would like to say something if possible.
Very good. Mr. Cunha.
Hello?
Give it a try here. You're a little bit digitized, but try one more time. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, Chairman Peterson. I think I'm on.
And we lost you.
Manuel, turn your video off.
Turn the video off. It's off.
It might help your connection.
Is that better? Probably not.
Yep,
Yes.
little.
Yeah, we can't see.
Oh. Can you hear Kevin? You hear me? Oh my God.
No, we
Okay.
can. You're good, Manuel.
Okay, well, first, Chairman and Craig Peterson, for all the work you've done for the 2 years and all the activities and challenges you've gone through as the chairman of our air district. You've done a tremendous job. And I look forward very much working with Monty and him and his team as well as the district staff. But Kevin, on behalf of the CAC, all of us want to definitely thank you for everything you did for the 2 years of the challenges, just like Chairman Peterson had, of doing Zoom. And if it wasn't for the staff and the coordination, but you definitely ran a well-run meeting on time, ending on time, starting on time. And you've done a good job, and we certainly will miss you. I know you will be still around in various ways. And I know that the dairy industry really appreciated everything you did with the district and even EPA and even with Richard Corey from ARB. So, but on behalf of CAC members and the agriculture industry, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me the time to speak.
Thank you. And a quick round of applause for. All right, don't just stay in one pasture. Move around.
I'll wait for Cunha to move me.
Item number 10 is adopt proposed amendments to Rule 4905, natural gas-fired fan-type central furnaces.
All right, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm John Klassen, Director of Air Quality Science and Planning, and I'll be presenting this morning to talk about the proposed amendments to Rule 4905. So this rule was first adopted in 2005, and it established a NOx emission standard through a point of sale approach for a wide range of natural gas furnaces. This does apply to central natural gas furnaces with heat input less than 150,000 BTUs per hour, and for combination heating and cooling units, furnaces less than 65,000 BTUs per hour. We've had a number of regulatory efforts in this area and with this rule over the years. And through that, manufacturers have been able to successfully develop furnaces that can meet the current NOx limit of 14 nanograms of NOx per joule of heat. That was lowered from the original limit of 40. So we've gone from 40 down to 14 nanograms per joule, and this has been successful for all types at this point, except for manufactured home furnaces, which is what we're talking about this morning. And manufactured home unit furnaces represent about 1% of total units sold throughout the valley. So we're just talking about a small portion of all the furnaces out there that this rule amendment affects. COVID-19, of course, has delayed a number of things across all sectors, but in terms of manufacturing these new types of furnaces, that's also affected this process as well. The manufactured home units did have a deadline to meet that newer low NOx standard by September 30th of 2021, just a few months ago. Supply chains were, of course, affected because of COVID-19. There were labor shortages. We heard this from manufacturers through this past fall of concerns with this. There are also new standards set by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the U.S. Department of Energy, that places requirements for these types of furnaces. So because of concerns with COVID and supply chain delays and these new requirements, all these complexities, manufacturers have requested a little more time to develop compliant low NOx units for these manufactured home type units. So we also worked closely and tracked this with the South Coast Air Quality Management District. They have a similar rule for furnaces with the same NOx limits. So we watched closely what they did this past fall. We've usually followed them closely, and they followed us as we do these things together to keep things consistent across the market in California. So what we're proposing here in our rule is to extend the compliance period for all manufactured home furnaces by 2 years. So this will extend it until the end of September 2023. It was 2021, now we'll extend it to 2023, and this parallels the extension that South Coast set up in their rule 1111 just a few months ago in October. We'll continue to have a 6-month sell-through period after that end date at the end of September 2023. And these proposed amendments would allow the continued availability of these furnaces for the affordable housing market, which we feel is really key. And we've heard that from manufacturers as well. So as far as our rule development public process, we work closely with the manufacturers to get their feedback earlier this year, hearing from them all the challenges they're having in developing compliant units to meet that 14 nanogram per joule limit. We held a public workshop on November 18th with a subsequent public comment period. Those comments have assisted in us developing the proposed amendments before you today. And some of the comments that we received through this process were supportive of our proposed amendments. And there were a few questions regarding potential new technologies that could be developed as we continue to think about this sector. The proposed amendments for this Rule 4905 were publicly noticed and made available on November 16th. And just a few notes on looking ahead. We will continue to look for opportunities to continue to reduce emissions from residential fuel combustion as it becomes more feasible in the future. Just a note on the emissions from this category. Residential space heating accounts for about 1.5% of the total NOx across the valley, across all categories for that year 2024, which is a key attainment year for us for the PM 2.5 standards. We'll keep watching as electric heat pumps and residential solar become more widely available. There are a number of local ordinances and new building standards that were set recently requiring electrified space heating and appliances, none that we know of in the San Joaquin Valley, but we'll continue to track this as it happens across the nation and across the state. In addition, we'll be considering equity issues, which are critical as strategies are evaluated by local agencies, CARB, the PUC, other agencies, thinking about the lowest income families who are most impacted by the high cost of transition to new types of units. So we'll need to understand that as well going forward. And we'll continue to work with other air districts who are considering this, local agencies, state agencies, utilities, and stakeholders to think about other opportunities for promoting zero emissions technologies as they become available going forward. So with that, our recommendations this morning is to adopt the proposed amendments to Rule 4905 and authorize the chair to sign the attached resolution. And that's it for this presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very good, thank you. Questions from the board? Comments? Dr. Sheriffs.
Thank you. Thank you for your work on this. And once again, I think the flexibility of the district is to be commended in terms of how we approach these things and continue to get input and not afraid of readjusting courses, circumstances suggest is the wisest. And again, this is an example. It's really a very small area, but every little bit counts. So it's important to keep focused on it. You know, I just want to comment on looking ahead, and it indeed is looking ahead. And I don't think this is the place for an extended discussion, but you talk about recent local ordinances with building standards and electrified space and things that will clearly contribute to our mission in terms of clean air and greenhouse gas reductions. And I think we certainly in the future want to consider how we're going to educate local entities about these options, these opportunities. And potentially some of them may look attractive to this board to being want to promote local areas considering these kinds of things for adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Pacheco-Warner.
Yeah, two things. One, when do you expect to have an assessment of whether or not the 2023 timeline is actually going to be a good one, you know, or whether we're still facing the same issues? So pretty much like, when can we expect to hear back that this is a green light or not? And then the other is a comment just really echoing Dr. Sheriff's comment about continuing to look for the cleanest available technologies, and how we at the district can support that is crucial. Thank you.
I think just a quick answer, Dr. Pacheco-Warner, to your first question. So what the board has done with this rule has been to establish deadlines. And generally what's happened is in that last year, if there had been any major concerns from the manufacturers in developing the technology, that would be like we heard this year from them, that there's engagement that may occur at that point in time. Certainly the signal though that we send out with the rule is that this is it, this is your deadline. So not to say that we don't know, it is a little bit unpredictable, I guess, in terms of, as Dr. Sheriffs was talking about how long the pandemic lasts and other things that are just hard to predict from this point forward. But we also know that technology is also advancing at the same time. And so I do think it, especially given that this is a very small percentage of the total units and all the other units now are in compliance, that I feel good that this would be the deadline, for these units, and the other technologies will also mature enough to where I don't see a reason to even really send any signals that we consider anything, beyond this date. But of course, you never really know what happens, and so I think there's always just like we always do, we can reassess all these issues at that time. Now, as far as the second piece of what you talked about, and Dr. Sheriff's observations as well, it is something that we are looking into and will be looking into in this coming year with respect to the development of other technologies, and working with our partners in South Coast, the Bay Area, other jurisdictions that are looking at this, land use agencies that are looking at new building standards as well. This is a very fast evolving space, and I think as these technologies become more feasible and as opportunities arise, I think in terms of, especially with some of the new funding that also maybe a lot of these ordinances are tied to carbon footprint and reduce, on a relative basis, this heating is a bigger percentage of total carbon footprint. So, and as the board recently discussed with respect to climate initiatives and looking for opportunities, we're certainly looking for ways to leverage what is really kind of carbon footprint driven right now to also maybe achieve some air quality benefit at the same time. So we are looking at those issues and are looking to partner, but it's a very complex space as well because of the equity issues, because of the high capital involved. In fact, many older homes, I mean, it's not even just upgrading a furnace in an attic, it's upgrading the entire electrical infrastructure at a home to be able to transition. It makes more sense when you have solar. We know that there's issues in continuing to deploy solar, especially in lower income communities. So there's a variety of factors that there's a great infrastructure issues. These are all things that the PUC, CEC, and others are looking at right now. And we want to be at the table and supporting those efforts and seeing if we can find opportunities through our own mechanisms to support that transition as well, as it will help us down the road.
Very good. See any further questions? Want to go to the public?
Through the chair, we do have public comment. Mr. Matthew Perry.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. I'm Matthew Perry. I'm the Director of Operations for Johnstone Supply, which serves throughout the San Joaquin Valley. We do parts and equipment for heating and air conditioning. And yeah, just want to let you guys know that the majority of the segments, the market segments, we've moved heavily towards heat pump for most of them, with the balance being for ultra low NOx. And specific to this segment for manufactured homes and the proposed amendment, we just want to voice our support for the proposed amendment to allow time for the manufacturers to release either ultra low NOx compliant technology or another technological solution to fulfill that market segment. So yeah, just voicing our support for the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cynthia Pinto Cabrera.
Hi, good morning, Chair and members of the board. Cynthia Pinto Cabrera with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. First, like to thank the staff for continued collaboration in all of these rule amendments as we work towards clean air in the valley. Opening the amendments for this rule offers an important opportunity for the Valley Air District to adopt rapid electrification for furnaces and heat pumps and support the valley in transitioning into a green economy where we can invest in building decarbonization. And this would ultimately bring co-benefits of improved indoor air quality and protecting public health. As mentioned, as of December 13th, and as staff had mentioned, over 54 cities and counties have adopted ordinances to phase out the reliance on gas in new buildings. Bay Area, AQMD has proposed an amendment to their natural gas furnace rule, Rule 9-4, requiring zero NOx emissions for any furnaces installed after 2028. The South Coast continues to look into zero emissions for all new buildings for both space and water heating, for residential and commercial buildings, and for ultimately just small and large facilities. We're happy to see that the district is considering equity and zero emissions in their future work in incorporating electrification for furnaces and heat pumps and support building decarbonization. And while the district works on this, we'd like to see immediate action also be taken to prioritize low-income homes and small businesses to benefit earlier from health, comfort, and life cycle cost savings afforded by electrification. And we look forward to continuing to work with you all on these comments, on these rule amendments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Jeff Small.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, my name is Jeff Small. I'm with U.S. Air Conditioning Distributors, and we are a California-owned private HVAC distributor with 40 locations in California. And we would like to voice our support for extending the compliance period, as has been suggested, to 2023, along with the 6-month sell-through. We're recognizing there are only 2 manufacturers for this product. These mobile home type furnaces are considered a specialty item. There's a very specific space that they have to fit into, and cannot be served by other products already in the marketplace, which are compliant with the 14 nanograms. So by allowing the manufacturers more time to develop the technology for these specialized items, that's gonna help everyone out. So again, I'd like to voice our support, and also aligning with the South Coast amendments. That gives us that consistency throughout all of our California locations. So thank you for your work on this matter.
Thank you.
Next is Janet Dietz Kamei.
Thank you. I would like to echo Dr. Sheriff's comments regarding public outreach, of informing the public of alternative ways to heat a home. We, a few years back, had to replace an air conditioner. I wasn't aware of heat pumps. Had I known about them, I would have used one. And other electrical sources, just educating the public of what is available out there, including using electric appliances rather than gas ranges. And I've said this in many comments before. I would like to see some way of providing electricity to disadvantaged communities through solar panels, putting up solar panels in an area where they can get the electrical sources at a lower cost. Since I still have some time on this, I would like to say goodbye to Chair Peterson and congratulations to the new board member officers, Mr. Reyes and Pariera. And I would like to also wish everybody a happy Christmas and Happy New Year and any other holidays being celebrated right now. Thank you.
Thank you, and the same to you.
Through the chair, there is no additional public comment on this item.
Very good. All right.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Bessinger?
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa?
Yes.
Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Ms. Fugazi?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Pereira?
Aye.
Mr. Preciado? Mr.
Yes.
Preciado? Thank you. Mr. Reyes?
Aye.
Dr. Sheriff?
Yes.
Ms. Shucklian?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Yes.
And Mr. Peterson?
I vote aye.
Motion passes. Item number 11 is adopt proposed amendments to Rule 4354, glass melting furnaces.
Yeah, me again. Yep. So I just wanted to let the board know. I should have said this before the last presentation, but John Klassen, our Director of Planning and Science, he's doing 3 presentations in a row. We've had some impacts due to COVID that put him in a position to present the 3 of these. So, yeah. All right, thank you, and good morning again. So I'll be presenting this item as well regarding proposed amendments to District Rule 4354, glass melting furnaces. So a little bit of background here on this first slide. Rule 4354 was first adopted in September of 1994. It's been amended a number of times since then, 6 times since then, continuing to strengthen this rule. This rule has emissions limitations set for a variety of pollutants, including NOx, CO, VOC, SOx, and PM10 from glass melting furnaces. To date, through all the amendments that we put into place and all the emissions reductions that have been achieved from these facilities, NOx emissions have already been reduced by about 75% to date, which is great. There are industrial control technologies that are required for glass melting furnaces to meet these stringent limits. They already have controls in place. I'll say a bit more about that in a few minutes. We did want to note here too that in July of 2020, EPA did approve this rule as being a most stringent measure, meaning it's the most stringent glass melting furnace rule in the nation at that time. And specific types of glass melting furnaces have different limits that I'll show here in a few minutes. And this is due to the variations in glass production processes, residency time of the material in the furnace, and different temperature requirements. So each process is a little unique. As you know, we do need to get further emissions reductions to meet our air quality standards that are in front of us. Like you know, we have an unmatched combination of unique geography, meteorology, and topography that are working against us that make it a challenge. We need to get a lot more emissions reductions to meet the federal PM 2.5 and ozone standards in front of us, needing to go beyond current limits in our rules to see what else that we can do. Looking at this rule was a commitment from our 2018 PM 2.5 plan that you might remember. One of the commitments was to look at glass melting furnaces to see if it's possible to get further emissions reductions from this category, and that's exactly what we've done to work through this project this past year. We also have a commitment in your boards and the CARB approved AB 617 South Central Fresno Community Emission Reduction Program to look at this rule as well to see if further emissions reductions are possible. So working on this over the last year to 2 years, we've conducted a comprehensive review of requirements in other air districts, looking at the lowest emission limits being achieved for installations across the state, looking at cost and feasibility of the most effective emission control technologies that are available. And as you know, health benefits are really key for us. Getting these emissions reductions will improve health across the valley in these areas where these facilities are operating. As you know, exposure to PM 2.5 and ozone to high levels of those pollutants can cause a variety of health issues like asthma, chronic bronchitis, irregular heartbeat, respiratory and cardiovascular hospitalizations, and other issues. So we continue to implement control measures to get those emissions reductions in PM 2.5 and in precursor emissions that can form PM 2.5 through chemical processes. And so through this rule, we're looking at further emissions reductions from NOx and SOx, both being precursors, NOx being a precursor to the formation of ammonium nitrate, which is a big portion of wintertime PM 2.5. And SOx emissions can also form ammonium sulfate, which is another component of PM 2.5. Of course, direct PM 2.5 emissions reductions are absolutely essential for meeting the health-based standards, and these proposals here in this rule will get more PM reductions as well. And so this proposed rule will support our overall goal of attaining the health-based standards for PM 2.5 and ozone and protect public health. So a little more detail here on the glass melting furnaces that are operating in the San Joaquin Valley. There are 6 facilities with glass melting furnaces. There are 3 different types that operate in the valley. There are 3 facilities that are called a container glass facility, where the glass is pressed or blown into molds to create glass bottles. There are fiberglass facilities. There's one in the valley that operates to create fine filaments used in construction of buildings and homes. And then flat glass facilities where they produce things like windows or windshields for vehicles. There are 2 facilities that do that in the valley. We did want to note here too that these furnaces do operate for long periods, up to 12 to 15 years in their lifetime during their campaign. And it's during that time when they rebuild it every 12 to 15 years, that is the time to do a comprehensive update to the emissions control system, because it's a really intense rebuild and engineering process to include something comprehensive like that. So as I mentioned, these facilities already do have a number of control technologies in place to reduce emissions from NOx control technologies, which can be selective catalytic reduction or oxy-fuel-fired furnaces, or selective non-catalytic reduction. They have technologies in place to reduce particulate matter using electrostatic precipitators or ceramic filter systems, and then SOx control systems already, like dry scrubbers and semi-dry scrubbers. So these facilities already have a number of these control systems in place. Looking now at the emissions from glass melting furnaces compared to the entire San Joaquin Valley's NOx emissions. So on the left-hand side here in that first pie chart, that little orange sliver there, that's the total emissions of NOx from the glass melting furnaces versus all the NOx emissions across mobile sources, stationary sources, area sources across the whole valley. So about 1.6% of the valley's NOx emissions come from glass melting furnace operations. On the right-hand side, we narrowed that down to just looking at stationary source emissions only. And so from glass melting furnaces, that makes up about 11.5% of all the stationary source NOx emissions. And we put a note here at the bottom of the slide, down at the bottom, just looking at the PM 2.5 emissions instead of NOx. Looking at just the glass melting furnaces, that's about 0.9% of the total direct PM 2.5 emissions across the valley, across all categories. And then again, looking at just stationary source emissions, glass melting furnaces are about 2.3% of the total PM 2.5 emissions from stationary sources. So now getting to some details of what we are proposing with these rule amendments. And this slide here is for container glass melting furnaces specifically. We are proposing to lower the NOx emissions limits with a phased compliance schedule for container glass facilities. The current NOx limit in the rule is set at 1.5 pounds of NOx per ton of glass pulled. What we're proposing for a phase 1 limit, which would go into effect January 1st, 2024, is that would be lowered to 1.1 pounds of NOx per ton of glass pulled based on a rolling 30-day average. We then have a phase 2 limit that would go into place starting January 1st, 2024, but no later than December 31st, 2029. At that next point, they do the furnace rebuild, like I explained, where that happens every 12 to 15 years. So if there's a furnace rebuild that's happening during that time, that's when this phase 2 would go into effect, but no later than the end of 2029. And that would be lowered to 0.75 pounds of NOx per ton of glass pulled based on the 30-day rolling average. We are also proposing to lower the PM10 emissions limits in the rule. The current limit is set at 0.5 pounds of PM10 per ton of glass pulled based on the 24-hour block average. That would be lowered to 0.2 pounds of NOx per ton of glass pulled, of PM10 per ton of glass pulled. And that would go into effect January 1st, 2024. And then finally, the SOx emissions limit is currently set at 1.1 pounds of SOx per ton of glass pulled on a 30-day average. That would go down to 0.85 pounds of SOx per ton of glass pulled going into effect January 1st, 2024. Now going to the flat glass melting furnace operations, we're also proposing to lower the NOx emissions limits also with a phased approach. Looking at the current NOx limits in the rule, those are set at 3.2 and 3.7 pounds of NOx per ton of glass pulled. There's two different schedules for enhanced and early enhanced that are set in the current rule. So what we're proposing here is that on January 1st, 2024, for the first phase, those numbers would be lowered to 2.5 and 2.8 pounds of NOx per ton of glass pulled on a 30-day and a 24-hour average. And then the phase 2 limit, similar to the container, this would go into effect January 1st, 2024, and no later than December 31st, 2029, when the next furnace rebuild happens within that time frame, or it's got to be at least happen by the end of 2029. And those numbers would then lower again to 1.5 and 1.7 pounds of NOx per ton of glass pulled based on a 30-day and a 24-hour average. And a few more points here for flat glass melting furnaces. Again, for PM10, we are proposing to lower that limit as well, and this would go into effect January 1st, 2024, where it would be lowered from 0.7 pounds of PM10 per ton of glass pulled to 0.2 pounds of PM10 per ton of glass pulled on the 24-hour block average. And then we're proposing to maintaining the existing stringent SOx limits for flat glass melting furnaces. The facilities operating in the valley are already employing the maximum control feasible to reduce SOx emissions, and it's not really technologically feasible at this time to do anything further to get more SOx reductions from those types of operations. Now, looking briefly at the cost effectiveness analysis, we conducted this for this rule as we do for other rules. We looked at a number of sources for the costs, getting actual costs provided by the facilities based on their estimate, looking at engineering estimates. Control technology vendors and manufacturers provided a lot of information to us as we built this up. We looked at costs of electricity, fuel, and replacement cost, and then looking at EPA's Office of Air Quality Planning and Standards cost factors that they include in some tools that they have available. So we included a range of potential costs based on varying potential compliance approaches and cost estimates, and that's included in our analysis and our staff report. We held a number of virtual meetings with facilities and vendors, manufacturers, and stakeholders to gather all this cost information. And based on our analysis, NOx reductions for cost effectiveness are in the range of $3,000 to $54,000 per ton of NOx reduced, and for SOx, it's about $5,000 to $11,000 per ton of SOx reduced. And looking at the potential emissions reductions that we're estimating from these rule amendments, on the top here of this table, this shows the total NOx reductions that we expect from these changes, and that's the full implementation of phase 2 at the top there. By the time we get to 2030, we're expecting about 1.67 tons per day of NOx reduced. And then for SOx, we're expecting 0.07 tons per day, and PM10, 0.13 tons per day through the implementation of this rule amendment. We also conducted a socioeconomic impact analysis working with our third-party consultant, Eastern Research Group, put this together. This analysis, again, looked at COVID-19 adjusted baselines and multiple recovery scenarios used in modeling, which was also done for other rule amendments we've done recently. This included board and CARB improved methodologies for doing this type of work. And we wanted to note here that there are high costs with the implementation of this rule, potentially significant impacts, and that is why we set up a phased approach here, where there's one phase that goes into effect 2024, the second phase by end of 2029, to achieve the emissions reductions that we need, but also providing some limited flexibility to plan for those additional controls during the next furnace rebuild process. Our public process to amend this rule, as I mentioned, this is a part of the commitment in the 2018 plan for the 97, 2006, and 2012 standards that was adopted by our board in November of 2018. We held a public scoping meeting for this in December of 2020. This past year, we had a couple of workshops at the end of September and early November to provide rule concepts and get feedback on what we're proposing. We give regular updates to the Citizens Advisory Committee, the Environmental Justice Advisory Group, and at governing board meetings. We had community engagement through the AB 617 steering committees to let them know of these workshops happening. And we posted an initial proposed rule for this amendment in November of 2021. Then we posted the final rule November 16th, a few weeks later. And there were ongoing opportunities for public input through the rule development process. Just briefly here, to summarizing at a high level that the comments that we received through this rulemaking process, we had some comments along the lines of that the compliance deadline should be delayed. We also had comments that the deadline should be moved up. We also had a lot of comments and questions about operational costs and the impacts of those costs, and flexibility could be needed. Our responses to those comments are that emissions reductions, these are needed to meet our planned commitments by 2024 and 2025, which are two key deadlines for the PM 2.5 standards. The amendments will continue to establish the most stringent measure in the nation for glass melting furnaces. We propose here a phased approach, which will get some reductions that we need in the near term, while allowing some of that limited flexibility to put in more comprehensive emissions control systems for the next time the furnace is rebuilt by the end of 2029 deadline. And we had a robust public process to allow for stakeholder input. So our recommendations this morning is to adopt the proposed amendments to Rule 4354 and to authorize the chair to sign the attached resolution. That's it for our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks, John. Questions from the board? All right, seeing none, we'll go to public comment.
Through the chair, we do have public comment on this item. Cynthia Pinto Cabrera.
Hello again, Cynthia Pinto Cabrera with Central Valley Air Quality Coalition, and we'd just like to express some support for a few amendments after reviewing the rule. And we support the removal of the exemption for any glass melting furnace that is a part of a stationary source with the total potential to emit for all processes less than 10 tons per year of NOx and less than 10 tons per year of VOCs. And we also support the lowered emission proposed in phase 2. We also continue to encourage the Valley Air District to continue to go above and beyond their current proposals and remove the alternatives to emissions reductions, which state an operator of multiple furnaces or a furnace battery may choose to meet the appliance emissions limit by considering the multiple furnace or furnace battery as a single unit. We just have some reservations about 2 units being able to be counted as one, and some questions about that. And we just continue to encourage the Valley Air District again to lower the emissions and the lower emissions to be implemented sooner. But again, thank you to the staff for all their work on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I see no additional public comment on this item.
Okay, Supervisor Mendez.
It talks here about container glass. I'm assuming this is wine bottles. Yeah, and so I'm just saying theoretically, if these plants didn't exist, all these wine bottles would have to be imported in. So we would have additional pollution from these glass bottles coming in. Is that a good assumption?
That would be correct. Or you'd be trucking some of the wine out, or just depending on
right.
Like
We'd
bottling
have to truck
needs,
the
but there would be some movement of
or to bring the bottles in too. I'd like to
That's
make
correct.
a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Bessinger?
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa?
Aye.
Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Ms. Fugazi?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Werner?
Yes.
Mr. Pereira?
Aye.
Mr. Preciado?
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Aye.
Dr. Sheriff,
Yes.
Ms. Shucklian,
Aye. Aye.
thank you. Mr. Wheeler,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
But I,
Motion passes. Item number 12 is adopt proposed amendments to Rule 4352, solid fuel fired boilers, steam generators, and process heaters.
Okay, last one for me. So I'll be presenting this as well this morning. This is regarding proposed amendments to Rule 4352, solid fuel fired boilers, steam generators, and process heaters. Just a quick overview of this rule as well. This was adopted in September of 1994. It's been amended 3 times since then. And as with the glass melting rule that we just discussed, this was approved by EPA as being the most stringent measure in July of 2020. Through the implementation of this rule and amendments over time, just like with the glass melting rule, we've controlled NOx emissions by about 75% already through this rule. Solid fuel fired boilers and steam generators and process heaters subject to this rule primarily are used for power generation. There are 6 facilities operating in the valley that fall under this rule. 1 is a municipal solid waste facility and 5 are biomass facilities. Just to give you a scope of the emissions from these facilities compared to the total in the valley. On the NOx side, the emissions from these facilities are about 1.1% of the total NOx across the valley of all different categories. Looking just at stationary source emissions, these facilities are about 8.5% of the NOx across all stationary source. Then looking at PM 2.5, these facilities are about 0.3% of the total PM 2.5 across the valley. And then looking at stationary sources only, they comprise about 2.4% of the total across stationary sources. As we discussed with the last presentation on the glass melting furnace rule, we need more emissions reductions to meet the health-based standards. This rule was also a commitment from our 2018 PM 2.5 plan to look at this rule to see what further emissions reductions were possible, which is why we went through this process the last couple of years to evaluate this commitment. There are commitments also included in the AB 617 South Central Fresno and Stockton community emission reduction programs to look at this rule specifically. So we're fulfilling that as well through this analysis. And of course, just like with the other rule, we did a comprehensive analysis looking at other air district requirements, looking at the control technologies available, looking at cost and feasibility of seeing what else could be possible to get more emissions reductions. Health benefits are certainly, just like with the other rule, are important for us. Getting the emissions reductions from this category as well will go a long way to help us attain the PM 2.5 and ozone federal standards. This rule also addresses emissions of NOx and SOx, like we described with the last rule amendment, helping us reduce emissions or different components of PM 2.5, and will help get us more direct PM 2.5 emissions reductions. These facilities do already have emissions control units in place, just like with the last rule. They have NOx control technologies, as well as SOx and particulate matter, similar types of technologies from SNCR or SCR, dry sorbent injection systems for SOx or wet scrubber systems, and with particulate matter, they could have electrostatic precipitators, bag houses, or multi-clones in place. So looking now at what we're proposing for the amendments to this rule, looking first at municipal solid waste facilities, we're proposing to lower the existing NOx emissions limits. The current limit is set at 165 ppmv, corrected at 12% CO2. We're proposing to lower that NOx limit to 90 ppmv at 12% CO2 on a 12-month rolling average, and then 110 ppmv at 12% CO2 on a block 24-hour average. This rule doesn't currently have a PM10 emissions limit, but we are proposing to establish one through this amendment, where we would set that at 0.04 pounds of PM10 per MMBTU, or also expressed as 0.02 grains per DSCF at 12% CO2. We're also proposing to establish the SOx emissions limit for the first time in this rule, where we would set that at 0.03 pounds per MMBTU, or expressed as 12 ppmv at 12% CO2 on a 12-month rolling average, and also 0.064 pounds per MMBTU, also expressed as 25 ppmv at 12% CO2 on a block 24-hour average. And full compliance would be required for these emissions limits by January 1st, 2024. Now, looking at the biomass, on the biomass side, we're proposing to lower the existing NOx limits, where currently the limit is set at 90 ppmv of NOx at 3% O2 on a block 24-hour average. We're proposing to lower that to 65 ppmv at 3% O2 on a block 24-hour average, And just like with the other category, we're going to establish a PM10 and SOx emissions limits for the first time, those being set at 0.03 pounds per MMBTU for PM10 and 0.02 pounds per MMBTU on a rolling 30-day average and 0.035 pounds per MMBTU on a block 24-hour average for the SOx emissions limit, with these also going into effect January 1st, 2024. We're also proposing to remove an exemption that's currently within the rule. Currently, facilities with the potential to emit less than 10 tons of NOx or VOC are exempt from the emission limit requirements of this rule. We are proposing to remove this exemption. And with this removal, there would no longer be any solid fuel-fired unit that would be exempt from the requirements of this rule. And there are 2 facilities in the Valley that would be newly subject to this requirement through this removal of the exemption. Just like with the glass melting furnace rule, we conducted a cost effectiveness analysis looking at various sources of cost, getting information from the facilities, engineering estimates, manufacturers and vendors, also looking at EPA's information that they have available. We held a number of meetings to gather these costs together to go into our analysis, and that all resulted in a NOx cost effectiveness of about $26,000 per ton of NOx reduced, and a SOx cost effectiveness of anywhere from about $7,100 to almost $30,000 per ton of SOx reduced. And the full details of this are provided in our staff report. Looking now at what we expect for emissions reductions from these proposed amendments, and these are in the time frame of 2024 when full compliance is required. For NOx, we expect about 0.71 tons per day in reductions across both categories, municipal solid waste and biomass. Looking just below there for PM10, we expect about 0.31 tons per day in emissions reductions, and then 0.27 tons per day for SOx reductions. We also conducted a socioeconomic analysis as a part of this project. Again, Eastern Research Group, our third-party consultant, worked with us on this. The units affected are across a number of industries, municipal solid waste and biomass. We looked at COVID-19 adjusted baselines, just like with the other projects we worked through recently, to look at different recovery scenarios. And this used the board and CARB approved methodologies for socioeconomic work. There were no significant impacts that are a result of to the biomass industry from this analysis, but there are potential significant impacts to the municipal solid waste facility that would be required to make some updates. We again went through an extensive public process to amend this rule. This started with our 2018 PM 2.5 plan adopted by our board in November of 2018. We had a public scoping meeting at the end of 2020 in December. We've had a couple of public workshops at the end of September and early November of this year. We gave updates to the CAC, the EJAG, and your governing board. We had community engagement through the AB 617 steering committee process, and we proposed an initial rule for this on November 4th, and then posted our final proposed rule on November 16th, and there were many opportunities for public engagement through the process. So just a quick summary of some of the comments that we got along the way as we worked on this. There were some comments that we should reduce PM 2.5 emissions and not just PM10. And our response to that is that most of the PM10 from the source category really is PM 2.5. And so getting those reductions and setting those limits for PM10 are getting us some good PM 2.5 reductions as a part of this rulemaking. A comment was to remove the exemption for units that have potential to emit less than 10 tons per year of NOx and VOC, and we are proposing to remove those exemptions from this rule. And there were some concerns with the stringency of the limits for SOx and PM10, and our response there was that based on our assessment of available technology and feasibility, we feel that the NOx, PM10, and SOx limits are feasible and achievable, and that all this information is provided in our staff report for the cost effectiveness and the feasibility analysis. So our recommendation this morning is to adopt the proposed amendments to Rule 4352 and authorize the chair to sign the attached resolution. And that's it. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. Councilmember Bessinger.
I have a question about the 2 facilities that are now going to be not exempt. Are those biomass plants? Page 8.
Yeah, one of the facilities is a dormant facility, so it shouldn't affect them. The other facility, it's not a biomass plant, but it's a small solid fuel fired boiler where they can use some different
types of waste to be able to generate some electricity, and they're aware of these new requirements, and they're planning to be able to meet those requirements.
So we're not going to be putting anybody out of business with this?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Sheriffs. Thank you. That was one of my questions. Minor stuff. Thanks for getting in the weeds on this. So there's one municipal solid waste facility. What are the rest of the municipal entities doing with their solid waste?
That's a great question. By the way, there are two of those statewide, just for an additional reference point. So the other primary for non-hazardous waste, the other primary method is basically landfilling the material. So they're subject to the general sort of waste requirements that other waste facilities such as landfills are subject to. For example, Cal Recycle is primary regulatory authority over that facility, as they are over other waste facilities like landfills.
Great. And just a suggestion on the language that we use, the health benefits of the emission reductions, both for this and the last. We talk about exposure to PM 2.5 and ozone linked to a variety of health issues. And I think in the current environment, we should add PM 2.5 is linked to adverse COVID outcomes. And that's another reason for people to be supporting this effort. One question, which I think you answered, but maybe you want to expand a little on, where we now are establishing some PM10 emission limits. And my question was what we achieve through that. Partly you answered it because PM 2.5 is included, and most of that PM10 is PM 2.5. But you can quantify it, or any comments you want to make about that.
Those and John did, I think, address this largely, but the vast majority of combustion-related emissions are addressed by both of these categories. It's an even higher ratio for the glass manufacturing facilities, is well over 90%, and it is 90% for these facilities as well. Is PM 2.5, and so we've used the same methodologies that have been used. These emissions are analyzed, for example, for the purpose of developing the inventories and plans as they relate to PM 2.5, and those factors are established through that process. So those are what are used to also estimate the benefits with respect to PM 2.5. And these controls are, when we talk about PM10, you're essentially talking about controlling PM 2.5.
Do we have any numbers about how much benefit we get there on 2.5 or 10?
I don't know if, let's see, not in front of me, but I would, as an easy reference point, I would assume 90% of the numbers that are represented on slide number 10 would essentially be the PM 2.5 benefit.
All right, so we get additional benefits by doing this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I don't see any further questions. We'll go to public comment.
Ms. Cynthia Pinto Cabrera.
Right. Thanks, Chair and board members and staff for all your work. Again, CVAC would like to express our support for the removal of the exemptions for the units that emit less than 10 tons per year of NOx and VOCs. And we'd also just like to continue to express our interest in direct PM 2.5 reductions. The steps that are being taken by staff are definitely ones in the right direction, but we should continue to actively seek direct PM 2.5 reductions, given that we still haven't met one of the 1997 standards. Table B11 states that PM 2.5 emission reductions are only 24.5% for municipal solid waste facilities and 28.4% for biomass facilities. after percent reductions were applied to PM 2.5 emissions inventories. And again, given that we have only met one of the 1997 standards, we continue to encourage direct PM 2.5 reductions. And again, thank you for the staff for all the work and the public process. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Janet Dietz-Kamay.
Thank you. I want to comment again, I repeatedly comment on black carbon and PM 2.5. We need to completely phase out incinerators and biomass facilities. Every time I see a reference to biomass, my heart sinks because we need to move on from biomass. These contribute to black carbon and PM 2.5 into our air. We need to reduce PM 2.5 in every way we can. We've addressed fireplaces and residential burning. And biomass and incinerators are another thing that can be quickly removed as contributors to PM 2.5. We're not meeting our PM 2.5 reductions for the Clean Air Act dating back to 1997, if memory serves that date. But I know it's back in the 1990s. PM 2.5 is, well, as Dr. Sheriff has pointed out, contributes to problems regarding COVID-19. So please, let's just get past incinerators and biomass. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Helm.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak today. Tom Helm. I'm from Valley Improvement Projects Environmental Justice Group in Stanislaus County. I'm also the Stanislaus County representative on the EJAG, it's part of the Air District, as well as the alternate seat for the Citizens Advisory Committee. I just want to agree with some of the comments that we've heard. I want to also thank staff, as many others have done. I know this is a lot of work that goes into this. I want to comment quickly on actually both the glass facilities and the incinerator. The Gallo Glass facility and the Covanta Stanislaus incinerator are the top emitters as far as NOx goes in Stanislaus County. At least I'm going off of 2019 data. Not only are they the top emitters in NOx, but they're about 10 times, emitting about 10 times more than the number 3 facility in the county. They're both the top for SOx. They're also in the top 5 for particulate matter. And not just the emissions. I know they may be a small amount overall for the valley, but as an environmental justice issue, they're very important to the communities that are close to these facilities, not to mention the criteria air pollutants, but also toxic pollutants that come out of the incinerator, like dioxin, which has been going into the air and falling down in the ground and in the soil for the last 30 years in that area near Crow's Landing, which is about 80% Latino community. The Gallo Glass facility is less than a half a mile away from an elementary school in the airport neighborhood of South Modesto, which is one of the most overburdened and disadvantaged communities in California, according to things like CalEnviroScreen. So it's very important to limit the emissions of these facilities for these local communities that are very vulnerable. So I just wanted to say that, and also agree with some of the other comments from my colleague, Ms. Pinto Cabrera from CVAC, Valley Improvement Projects, is a proud member of CVAC, and want to echo their comments on the natural gas furnaces and the as well as the biomass facilities. So thank you again to the board and to all the staff for allowing me to speak, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Through the chair, there is no additional public comment on this item.
Right, bring back the
Move to approve. Oh, I didn't see that up
Yeah,
there.
no worries. Dr. Pacheco-Warren.
Yeah, I was hoping that Samir, if you can address Ms. Cynthia Pinto Cabrera's comments around the direct PM 2.5, just because outside of the context of this rule, there are other things that you are doing in these facilities to control PM, direct PM. So if you can just kind of, so that, we understand and the public understands also the other controls that are going on.
Through the chair, I just want to respond really quickly to Dr. Pacheco's sort of question, as also some of the public question that came up as well. Yes, I do appreciate Ms. Pinto Cabrera and Mr. Helm and others that have been watching this process and commenting and supporting the process, and we've definitely been able to integrate, I think, a lot of the suggestions that were raised throughout the that process. So thank you to all of the groups that have also been assisting. So for PM 2.5, there are a couple of things that I think we captured in the presentation, but I wanted to just add a little bit more detail to. The total direct PM 2.5 from these facilities, and actually really across all the stationary sources, is a very small amount of the total PM 2.5 that you experience on the valley floor. NOx, definitely, as ammonium nitrate, drives a lot of the total PM 2.5. Direct PM 2.5 is not as significant in the bigger picture of what is our ongoing, PM 2.5 challenge. Now, with that said, for many, many years, for decades, we've been reducing direct PM 2.5 as well as NOx and SOx and all of the other pollutants that John mentioned through technologies like electrostatic precipitators, high temperature bag houses, and other technologies that have substantially and will now, with this proposed amendment, will significantly reduce even further PM 2.5. And so we continue to evaluate those emissions impacts as well as potential control technologies. And we think that with this rule, more can be done. Mr. Helm did highlight the importance of continuing to look at all of these different emission sources because of these are major sources, and we do need to continue to push the envelope when it comes to technology. And we do think that we'll continue reducing those emissions, which are important, at the community level. But I did want to note that while we talk about those PM 2.5 impacts, as John mentioned, as a percentage of total emissions, the major focus has been, well, it's been across the board because of our need, but NOx is as it relates to total PM 2.5 is the biggest pollutant, and Mr. Helm himself recognizes how large some of these facilities might be on it, at least as they relate to stationary sources. Now, mobile sources are still obviously, much larger in totality. The other thing I wanted to mention just really quick is that with these rules that are being proposed today, along with all the rules over the past couple of years that the board has adopted as it relates to the PM 2.5 plan, we're actually ahead now of all the commitments that the board has put into place when it comes to emissions reductions. We're still working with our federal and our state partners to see what they can do on the mobile source side of things, but the board has been taking some very significant actions to fulfill our commitments. And with the proposals today on the agenda, we're actually, and you've obviously, we've talked about ag burn and residential wood burning, engines, boilers, flares, and all the other categories that have come before your board, but we're actually ahead, and we continue looking for even more reductions, and there's more rulemaking that we're looking at in the coming year. So I wanted to just respond a little bit to the
that's
comment that was
helpful,
raised.
especially as I think about the biomass facilities, because while there are not many now, given the latest federal administration's commitments and some of the investments that are coming at the state level, I can definitely see this number changing over time in terms of existing, what we call existing facilities. And, just thinking about, for example, one that's being proposed in South Fresno, there is potential for direct PM, when we're talking about the use of, some of that waste in a pellet mill, 2 miles away from a community. And so that is, while we're not talking about a scale of all the trucks that run down the 99 for that community, that pellet mill will have an impact.
And there are existing requirements that address new and expanded facilities as well that we didn't talk about much today here, but there's best available control technology, toxics risk assessments, CEQA, and other processes that definitely would add extra layers of review to new projects and expanded projects. So I just wanted also just to validate that point that this is for existing facilities, obviously well controlled, and as new projects are also cited, there's a variety of other requirements and controls that are considered, and a variety of things that need to happen for those projects. And to the extent that they're there are ones out there that are being proposed. That review is ongoing as well, and just wanted to
Thank you.
confirm that and turn it back over to chair and board members for consideration on the item.
Very good. Okay, I think we did have a motion, but the motion maker
Second.
may have stepped out. So why don't we go with a motion again?
Move to approve.
So we have a motion and a second.
And I'll
Yeah.
second the motion.
Okay, multiple seconds. With that, thank you. And Madam Clerk, would you please?
The bench steps up.
Mr. Messenger,
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa,
Yes.
Mr. Couch has stepped out of the meeting. Ms. Pagazzi has stepped out of the meeting. Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Werner,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira has left. Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Aye.
I saw his lips move.
thank you.
Looked like a yes.
Dr. Sheriff,
Yes.
Ms. Shucklian. Ms. Shucklian, are you there? Okay, I think she might have stepped away. Mr. Wheeler has left the meeting and Mr. Peterson.
Aye, vote aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item number 13 is receive and file the 2021 annual report on the district's indirect source review program.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Brian Clements, your Director of Permit Services, and I'll be going over the district's 2021 annual report on the ISR program, which stands for Indirect Source Review. The district's ISR rule was a first in the nation rule on indirect sources to help mitigate emissions from development projects. The rule has been implemented over the last 15 years as initial implementation began in 2006. Its purpose is to reduce emissions or mitigate growth in NOx and PM10 emissions from development projects, both construction-related emissions and ongoing operational-related emissions from the project, the bulk of which are from mobile sources. The rule promotes incorporation of on-site clean air features and design elements that have immediate and local benefits to the community where the project is located. And then if the required reductions are not achieved through these on-site measures, developers are subject to off-site fees for the remaining amounts of required emission reductions. For these reasons, on-site measures are definitely preferred over off-site fees. All off-site fees collected by the district are used to fund emission reduction projects in the valley. There are a few mechanisms in the rule as far as applicability goes. One applicability mechanism is based on the land use approval process from a public agency, along with the project sizes. If the approval process with the public agency is discretionary, the thresholds identified on the slide here under the first bullet are what's used to determine if the project is subject to the rule. For example, a project with 50 residential units would be subject, 2,000 square feet of commercial space, 25,000 square feet of light industrial space, such as warehouses and distribution centers, and so on. Heavy industrial space can be subject to the rule, medical office space, general office space, educational space, government space, recreational space, and others. So there are many different applicable types of use subject to this rule. The second mechanism is large development projects requiring any land use approval from a public agency. So regardless of that public agency process being discretionary or ministerial, large projects are subject to the rule. And the large project thresholds aren't shown here, but they're 5 times the size of the discretionary levels. And then finally, transportation and transit projects are subject to the rule above certain thresholds, which are 2 tons of NOx or VOC emissions. The rule is designed to reduce emission impacts from development projects to assist the valley in meeting air quality standards. The rule breaks project emissions into 2 categories: construction emissions and operational emissions, with reduction requirements for each of those categories. For emissions related to construction, which focus on tailpipe emissions from off-road equipment. The requirements are to reduce NOx and PM10 emissions by 20 and 45% respectively, when compared to the California fleet average for the same type of equipment. And for operational emissions, which are based on a 10-year period, the rule requires reductions in NOx and PM10 by 33.3 and 50% respectively, when compared to unmitigated projects. As mentioned, emission reductions through Project Clean Air design elements are an important part of the program. Through the application process, the district provides a list of air quality improvement measures that developers reference and then implement to reduce emissions from the project site. Since the majority of the emissions from development projects are from mobile sources, much of the focus is on utilizing clean construction equipment and clean operating fleets and reducing vehicle miles traveled. Developers also implement other measures, such as those related to energy efficiencies and zero emission infrastructure, such as solar panels and electric vehicles charging stations. The benefits to implementing on-site clean air measures result in an overall better project, as emission reductions are achieved immediately and are permanent. Those reductions directly benefit the local community and reduces or eliminates the need for developers to pay off-site fees for the remaining reductions required under the rule. That said, after all the on-site clean air measures are taken into account and identified, developers are subject to mitigation fees to cover the remaining emission reductions under the rule. The funds are invested in the Valley through the district's grant and incentive programs to reduce air pollution in the Valley, which consist of grants to Valley businesses to electrify or replace existing diesel-powered off-road equipment and agricultural tractors, to replace old trucks with new low-emission trucks, grants to school districts to replace older and higher polluting school buses, grants to Valley municipalities to replace older buses and other vehicles, and grants to Valley residents to purchase electric vehicles, older, higher polluting vehicles, and to replace fireplaces and non-certified wood burning stoves with natural gas inserts, electric heat pumps, or other cleaner burning units. Summarizing this year's activities, we received 360 project applications and collected $5.5 million, which include approximately $1 million in voluntary emission reduction agreement funds. Most of the funds received have been encumbered or are in the process of being encumbered for emission reduction projects. And the emission reductions from projects approved through our ISR program this past year total over 3,000 tons from the use of on-site clean air project design elements and over 2,700 tons from off-site fees. As with any rule, outreach and communication is key. We've taken numerous measures to outreach to land use agencies to assist developers with ISR compliance. Since the initial implementation, the district has held public workshops, outreach meetings with the agencies in the Valley, school districts, and others, held training on various specifics of the program, such as walking through the application process. And we've held follow-up educational workshops with agencies throughout this time period, including this year. We have public flyers and tools and resources available on our website. And then in addition, through our California Environmental Quality Act work as a commenting agency on development projects, we send out hundreds of letters per year to agencies in the Valley to inform them of potential ISR applicability requirements and available resources on a project-by-project basis. So in summary, and due to these efforts, along with assistance from land use agencies and developer commitments and implementation of on-site clean air measures, over 17,000 tons of emissions have been reduced, directly benefiting local communities. And through the offsite mitigation and Vera fees, $128 million have been invested in approximately 11,500 clean air projects, which have resulted in nearly
15,900 tons of total emission reductions in the valley. So that concludes the presentation, and I'd like to open it up for any questions or comments you may have.
Good, thank you. Councilmember Bessinger.
I have a question regarding the large development projects requiring any land use approval. The way affordable housing is being pushed to cities and counties, we lose the great majority of our ministerial, that'd be 20 units per acre or more. We lose most of our ministerial power. Would a large project, affordable housing, would that be exempt from this? Because we don't have any ministerial land use issues?
The short answer is no. So but let me elaborate a little bit. So any residential project that is either discretionary, which I think, as you look at that affordable housing sort of power shift, I'd be interested to see kind of which of these sides those projects fall under, but it would be any 50 units, would be greater than 50 units would be subject to the rule for discretionary, and then a large development project, regardless of whether it's discretionary or not. So even depending on the way land use jurisdiction does, if they have a ministerial process, for example, for something and don't go through a CUP or other discretionary kind of a process at a certain threshold, would also be subject. So the rule actually covers the range of sort of authorities, and whether it's discretionary or ministerial, and the thresholds are adjusted sort of based on either approach. So just depending on exactly what the city does and whether it falls in one of those two categories, there is a threshold by which the development would be subject to the rule.
My understanding of the rules and the changes is that we lose both discretionary and ministerial oversight on affordable housing projects. They don't have to come and ask us. They can just give us their plans and go, we're building it here. And there's that much we can say, if anything. But so there's potential they may be exempt, or would at some point, because
I think we can examine that issue a little bit closer legally, but by taking a look exactly at what that transition is looking like, from an approval perspective. But certainly the rule wouldn't be intended to exempt any of those projects as currently written. So we'd have to. I think it'd be good to examine that situation.
I'll find out from my staff what we've had a few. Most of them probably haven't met this threshold, but I think most cities and counties are going to be seeing a curtailment of their land use oversight, and it's going to be difficult for us.
Yeah, I agree. When you look at even on small lots, the allowance of small apartments to be added into single, you get into the whole issue of, well, what regiments that, and if they want to build a fireplace in it, what happens? Do they? And so good questions. Dr. Sheriffs.
Thank you, and thank you for this summary. I don't know. Everybody else thinks this IRS stuff is obvious and simple, but I learn something every time we go through this, and I thank you for helping bring a little more light to this process. We get some important reductions and some important money from this. This is, I think, well over 2,000 tons a year. When we look at the last 15 years, we look at about $10 million a year to do important work. So this matters, absolutely. And I think also, I suspect it helps people do the right thing, which they want to do, which is also very good. I always worry when I hear about it, the leakage. How much are we losing given where we set the standard? Should we think about lowering the applicability to get more gains? So Any thoughts? How much are we capturing of what we could capture? How much are we not capturing that in fact could make a significant difference in these kinds of projects?
So Chair, board members, just a quick response to that. As you all know, there's always ongoing review of everything that we do, to see if there's always more opportunities. In fact, the rule was updated a couple of years ago to deal with some of the issues related to ministerial versus discretionary, and certainly something that we believe in continuous improvement. Just to put it in perspective a little bit, the rules. This is a discussion that was had, when we put this rule together as the first of its kind 15 years ago, and really the only of its kind actually. The threshold that were established by your board were established at what was decided to be, given the extreme non-attainment status of the region and the challenges that we were looking ahead to with a large black box in our ozone plan, were established actually pretty low. They're sort of, if you think about it from a major source perspective, say a stationary source, it's about a fifth of the level of what a stationary source project or facility would be subject to. And so, yeah, you always get into this question of, you can always lower things, but there's a balance here that the board, certainly, intended to establish with this rule. And so it's always a big discussion. We always have to take the opportunity when we develop our new plans. For example, there is a new ozone plan that we're working on, and I'm presuming a new PM 2.5 plan somewhere down the road. It is something that we should always keep an eye on. But I just wanted to, just from a historical perspective, provide a little bit of that clarification of how this was originally established as a stringent rule, as the only one of its kind, and one that's been looked at by other regions and localities across the country, actually, as something that they would hope to establish someday. And haven't actually been able to. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of that context.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any further requests for comment, so we'll go to public comment.
Do we have any public comment on Zoom? Through the chair, I do not see an indication of public comment.
All right. We at that point, then we'll bring it back to board. We do need to accept this report. So entertain a motion.
Accept.
Second.
Do we?
Traditionally, there hasn't been a vote on it. I think it's just more for receiving and filing it. So yeah, I think we'd be okay.
Item number 14 is verbal report on California Air Resources Board activities.
Sorry about that. It's okay. Making sure we're all legal here. So I have two updates that are very relevant to the San Joaquin Valley that have happened at the last Air Resources Board meeting. One is the adoption of a regulation that sets us on a timeline to transition the sales of small landscaping equipment to electric. And with that does come some incentives. As you can imagine, for us in the San Joaquin Valley, nowhere near enough incentives. So we'll definitely be pushing for more, as the biggest folks impacted are those sole proprietors that we see, embedded in our communities throughout. So, however, the benefits that we're expected to see and why it's exciting for us is that, we do expect to see some great local reductions from emissions from those equipment uses, as well as, if any of you have ever complained about noise of lawn equipment, that is also. But on the public health, both for communities and the individual user, who is the one, breathing in those emissions more directly, it'll be a game changer, and I think also a big signal to the market, as other things have been signaled from California to other places around the world in terms of this technology adoption and also improving the technology as well. The other one that is really exciting for us in terms of thinking about, you know, what we always say, well, most of our, emissions that we're struggling with are mobile source. The adoption of the truck smog maintenance and inspection maintenance program will allow us to really, really zero in the pilot phase in the San Joaquin Valley and in the South Coast for those trucks that may not be in compliance with the emissions requirements, and also giving them a path then to fix those. So while there are issues and we continue to work with CARB staff on how to better outreach about those programs and about these new requirements for our folks, in the San Joaquin Valley that are those, one truck owners that, versus those large commercial fleets. The impact that it's going to have on our mobile source emissions is quite significant, and one that many have touted as like the first time in a decade that we have real significant proposed mobile source reductions for places like the San Joaquin Valley. So really exciting on both of those fronts, and I'm sure you'll be hearing about it more in your jurisdictions. But as you think about the legislative platform and how to push things, further, I think definitely larger incentives for the small off-road engine equipment will be important, as well as greater outreach for those sole proprietors of both businesses for the SOAR, but also the trucks. And once again, I think it is important to note that in terms of the incentive programs, they're looking to the San Joaquin Valley as a model to, roll out some of these, which kind of, is a testament again to the great work that staff is doing here. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just one very short note on that item. Just wanted to recognize Dr. Pacheco-Warner. These are some of the bigger items that I think CARB has considered in some time, long hearings, extensive commenting, and considering a variety of very complex issues. So just wanted somebody who watched the hearing and tried to support it from a Valley perspective. Just wanted to extend our appreciation to her for just being a good representative of the Valley and her work on these items.
Very good, thank you. We have a question from Mayor Pro Tem Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one question. Dr. Pacheco-Warner indicated that the CARB board was recommending that in the landscape equipment area that there should be an aggressive move towards electrical equipment. I didn't hear any mention of battery, and I think as we move forward in trying to reduce emissions, your professional landscaper, the people who are hired to care for your yards are not going to buy electrical equipment. They're going to get battery equipment because that means that they have to plug into somebody's electricity. And at the cost of electricity today, it seems more prudent that battery operated equipment would be the preferable purchase for anybody, whether it's for home use or whether it's for professional use. So I hope they're not limiting it to electric only, that they will have in their proposal that battery operated equipment is part of what they're moving towards. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, battery powered equipment on the commercial space is what's the the preferred. And, you know, when they think about what those incentive packets will look like in terms of the selection of the type of equipment, will definitely, you know, overwhelmingly be around battery.
If I could, Mr. Chair, if I could make a shameless plug for something related to this, just use this opportunity to do some outreach. You know, part of what Dr. Pacheco-Werner is talking about is using the incentives that we have, and we're actually slated to receive potentially some more funding to work with cities, you know, counties, park departments, school districts, and others that could be some of the earliest adopters of some of this commercial grade electric equipment. It actually saves on fuel, and those that have been using it, actually, as long as you get some extra battery packs, and if you just think it through a little bit, there's actually quite a range of equipment that's becoming available. I'd love for the board to assist us in, you know, getting the word out to your various jurisdictions, so to see if we can continue to use these incentives to really show even more value demonstrations of these technologies. The funding is available today, and there could be more funding coming as well. So just wanted to highlight that fact. And we're trying to figure out a way to reach out to the landscaping industry as well, because there are some very, very significant issues with empowering and really connecting with the landscaping industry. There's a large industry, the large companies, they might be a little bit more amenable and feasible to do, but the owner operator type you know, businesses it is a very, very significant challenge, I think, moving forward with this measure that was adopted. So on that front as well, we're looking at some ways to try to, you know, connect better, but just wanted to, I'm going to get some information out to the board on the program. And if you could help us maybe get the word out to your organizations, I mean, that would be tremendous help.
I do have a question as well. So with respect to the mobile or the truck inspection maintenance, so is there intention to use the licensing period to do these inspections, or is it just roadside, or any idea how they're going to?
It's going to be a combination. So some of it is going to be roadside for those that don't have the telemetrics, but there is going to be an option for those that already use telemetrics to actually add that, you know, monitoring onto their fleets. And obviously, there is that tie to their, I don't know what the appropriate word is, but yeah, their licensing, their registration, yeah, just like our cars. So yeah, it'll be, you know, a similar process in terms of the DMV, but in terms of how they're checking, it is going to be a combination of handheld for those that may not be able to purchase the telemetrics. Again, those single owner folks, and then there's the telemetrics option, and then in addition, the use of the weigh stations as well, that are already used for a variety of other checks.
Okay. Any further questions?
Item 15 is Executive Director, APCO comments.
Mr. Chair, board members, I just wanted to wish you all a happy holiday season, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and everything in between. So, and the public as well, whoever's still tuned into the meeting. I'll keep my comments brief. Thank you.
Item 16 is Governing Board member comments.
Vice Mayor Fugazi.
Thank you so much. I apologize. I wanted to comment earlier, but I had to step out. But I want to definitely take this opportunity to thank Chair Peterson for all of his work and bringing that comical portion to our meeting, always having a comment that definitely is on the lighter side, that is always welcomed, because some of this information is really high level, and it's like I said, it's always welcome. I also want to welcome incoming Chair Reyes. I'm looking forward to having you lead us into this next year. as hoping that 2022 is better than 2021, always looking for those opportunities. I also wanted to let the board know that we had a tune in, tune up event. Of course, you know, I can't help but bring it up, but we had one in Stockton a couple weeks ago, and it was very successful. We had approximately 450 cars go through the emission test. And we had vaccinations that were out. We had test driving out as well. Information regarding the PG&E program that we have up here for charging stations at residential homes. And we had food boxes that we gave out. And Catholic Charities was here. It just really is. I mean, I love the 800 number. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love it. But I also love community, and our community being as it is, having these types of events is so vital to us. And so I'm looking forward to the new year and continuing them. So thank you all. Best wishes. Happy New Year. Health and prosperity to all.
Thank you. Dr. Sheriffs.
Thank you. I wish I could say it as well as was just said, but absolutely. Boy, what a challenging year for everyone. The ups and downs, the losses that I think everyone has experienced and have happened around them. It's hard to be jolly this season, but I think we can all be grateful for things. And certainly, as has been mentioned by many, I am certainly grateful for the opportunity, for the work that this staff has done, for the opportunity to work with them, for this board, for Chair Peterson's example over the last couple of years. And I also, I said it earlier, but I'll say it again, thank you, staff, for masking, for continuing to do that. It's something none of us like, none of us enjoy, does not enhance our ability to do our jobs, but it makes a difference. And thank you for protecting yourselves, for protecting those around you, and for protecting the public. And I think making the public not just feel welcome, but feel safe. So thank you for doing that and continuing to do that.
Thank you. Supervisor Mendez.
Yeah, I just want to personally thank Chair Peterson for chairing the last 2 years. I did it the previous 2 years, so I know what he was going through, and it just doesn't last here that day of the meeting. It continues on, and I'm looking forward to Chair Reyes. I think you're going to do a great job, and I don't think we'll skip a beat here. And I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Reyes.
Thank you. First, I want to let you know I really wanted to be there in person today, but a foot injury kept me from making the trip. But for Chair Peterson, congratulations and thank you for a job well done. Last 2 years, you've really exemplified leadership to the board and promoted proper decorum, which I think is very important. And I've been able to learn from your example. So thank you for that. And I also wanted to thank Vice Chair Pereira for his rock solid performance as Vice Chair, and also congratulate incoming Vice Chair Chiesa. Thank, of course, Mr. Abernathy for his service, and looking forward to working with Mr. Acuna. And finally, I wanted to thank the board for electing me to serve the residents, industry, and the board as chair. And I'm excited to work with the staff and board next year. So thank you and happy holidays.
Thank you. Mayor Preciado.
Yes, I also would like to congratulate new chair Reyes and vice chairs, and also the vice chairs, and also I would like to thank from Mr. Peterson for your commitment and 2 years of service to the board. I also would like to wish every one of you, staff and members and the public, a happy and merry holidays. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Shucklian. we'll come back to that.
Okay. No,
Councilmember Beth. Oh, there
I
she
made
is.
my comments earlier. Thank you.
Yep, you got it.
I'd like to join my colleagues to thank Craig for his excellent work. And we're looking forward to seeing you here physically, Bonnie. That'll be nice. I'd like to wish a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to staff. And hopefully we can shake the dust of 2021 off of our boots and get on with our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Lewis.
Thank you for the acknowledgement, and outgoing President Peterson, thank you for the year that I've sat on this board. Well, not quite a year, but it's been an enlightenment and truly an education as to the extent of how this whole organization operates. Thank you for your service, and thank you to Vice Chair Pereira for his service as well. And congratulations to our incoming chairman, Reyes. I wish you well in your adventure of conducting the meetings for this board. And we've all had opportunities in various organizations of sitting in that chair. So it's an awesome responsibility, and I'm sure you will conduct it and handle it well. To Samir and his staff, I can't thank you enough for your outreach this year. Samir always calls me before a meeting to help educate me on what's coming up on the agenda. And I truly appreciate that, because a lot of the language and the jargon is fairly new to me as a beginner here on this board. And as I've stated in the past, it's my goal to make sure that Merced County has every opportunity to take advantage of the incentives that are out there. And he has made sure that his staff has reached out to me to help move that forward. And we are working with the various cities to try to make rounds to appear to their council meetings to impart that information. So again, I can't thank you enough for your assistance in my first year here on the board. And I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a happy and safe New Year. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and welcome to the board. We really appreciate your opinions and your views and your questions. That it makes for a great outcome of our goal. So thank you for that. Let's see. I could say a few things. I will say one thing, and I just for awareness, and back to the solar side of things and electrical power in the area. And I've become aware. I've been asking about the impacts of solar on the Central Valley. And when you look at the diversion of water outside of the valley, one of the concerning things I came across was that both the PUC and CARB have identified the Central Valley as an area of opportunity for siting large solar facilities. There is something also that within that provides large solar facilities with a tax diversion, which affects counties, and it doesn't allow for the reassessment of those facilities. So we're going to lose agricultural production, we're going to lose agricultural land, we're going to lose jobs, and possibly tax basis that won't be backfilled. So, I get the move to electrical, but there are positives and negatives in each of those outcomes. And I think we need to be aware. I know that the industry is actively lobbying to reinitiate, because that tax exemption was due to expire in 2024. They're actively seeking to have that continued. And so just some of the impacts that outline the periphery of what we do here and how it's accomplished. And we get a win on one side and we may lose on the other. And so just an issue of awareness there. And then, finally, just again, saying thank you for the opportunity to serve, and to the staff. You guys are amazing. we all can't say it enough, and you make it easy to be a board member and participant, and your professionalism shows in this very challenging environment that we live in. I know many of us have just come through redistricting, and it's probably one of the most challenging scenarios I've ever been through as a supervisor, and you know, the emotions and motivations and all of the things that come with that. So again, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. I'm excited to see the continued leadership and have somebody else leading. So with that, I think we have one more item to outline.
Yes,
Go ahead. Item 17 is closed session.
Yeah, we have a closed session to consider public employee performance evaluation for the executive director, APCO, and the district council positions. Before we do that, we do need to see if is there any public comment on this item?
Through the chair, I see no indication of public comment on this item.
Okay,
So
very
we're gonna
good.
Turn to closed
Well,
session.
I will hold this in my hand, and one last time, meeting adjourned.